Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Everyone, you're all welcome from across Africa. So I will just introduce myself quickly. My name is Idiko Durinde, and I'm the Entrepreneurship Programs Manager at the Tony Elumelu Foundation. Joining me is also Adora Okoli, who is the Entrepreneurship Programs Executive. And we have Nadia and Foko, who are our translators who have been supporting us on the program, and they'll be translating to Portuguese and French respectively. And of course, we have our facilitator, Shegu Malegbemi. Shegu is going to be doing a recap on financial reporting and planning. So basically a recap from the last masterclass we had on how to, and plan your financials, how to give a better representation of your financial, especially when you're developing your business plan and you're pitching, so you can give accurate figures and you can, address the issue of your revenue properly. So I don't waste much of our time. I would hand over to Shegu, but before I do that, once Shegu is done, so Shegu is going to do a 30 minutes recap session and another 30 minutes to answer your questions. So please, if you have any questions you would like response to, or if there's anything you'd like to clarify, or while developing your business plan, there's something you're not clear about or you need clarity on, please ask your questions, drop them in the comment section. We would compile and share with Shegu, and he would provide response to those questions one after the other. So for questions we're unable to provide answers to, we will try as much as possible to also compile them, share with Shegu, and Shegu will provide responses, and we will share as frequently asked questions, and we will send to everyone via email. So thank you for joining us, Shegu. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ibuku. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I'm sure everybody can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
I'm just going to make an attempt to share my screen. So can we all see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see. Yeah, it's clear. And Shegu, sorry, just to chip in that once you're done with the slide, you just kindly hand over to Foko and Nadia to interpret, just for the betterment of other people across Africa who do not understand English. Thank you.
That works for me. Thank you once again, everybody. It's good to have you here, and I'm happy to be here as well. Last time we had a great time. However, because we didn't have our translators here, Nadia and Foko, we said, let's do this again. So very quickly, I'm just going through some of the slides and some of the things we discussed at the last session. Hopefully, you will be able to catch up. For those who attended the last session, this will just be a reminder, a recap, and it makes it stick, right? So best of both worlds. Anyway, what are we doing? I know that anytime people talk here about financial reports and their financial books, they just lose it, right? This session is basically for the majority of you guys, entrepreneurs. We will be talking about, we're going to demystify the whole concept of financial reporting. We're going to talk about why these numbers are important, who cares about them, and we're going to define some terminologies, and I'm going to show you 1 or 2 or 3 financial reports so that you get comfortable with it, and that next time when you see it, you are not scared. Foko, do you want to go first before Nadia?
OK, thank you, Segun. Donc, bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue à cette nouvelle session sur les rapports financiers. Donc, Segun nous annonce que la dernière fois, il est revenu peut-être assez rapidement. Aujourd'hui, on doit juste faire un petit résumé de tous les aspects financiers.
Thank you very much. Nadia, do you want to go?
Yes, thanks.
Hello, Segun.
Okay, yes. Boa tarde a todos. Esta sessão de hoje Can I go, Foco?
Yes, you can go, Nadia, please.
Ok. Então, como ia dizendo, esta sessão é como que uma recapitulação da masterclass sobre a parte aspectos financeiros que já foi que vocês tiveram cá com o Shegun. Na altura não havia a tradução, por isso eles decidiram, até achou que era importante termos outra sessão que seja de recapitulação, basicamente em trocar em miúdos muito rapidamente a importância de conhecer os números, a importância de fazer um registro financeiro, o significado de certos números e certos termos quando se trata de registro financeiro. Basicamente isso é um sumário daquilo que já foi dado na Masterclass. Ok? Acompanhem-nos para que vocês possam beber disso. Obrigado. Shegun, over to you.
All right, thank you very much. So these are a table of contents.
Shegun, I can go on, please.
Okay.
Ok, bienvenue à tout le monde pour cette session où on va juste faire un récapitulatif de tout ce qui est rapport financier dans un business plan. Donc, Segun nous annonce qu'on va aller assez rapidement sur 2 ou 3 points qui sont importants pour vous lorsque vous faites un plan d'affaires. Donc, soyez très attentifs et à la fin, posez vos questions. On pourra y apporter des réponses. Donc, merci et bienvenue encore pour cette session récapitulative. Ok, over to you, Segun.
Okay. These are tables of contents. I'll skip this because of time, and we're just going to go right into it. Very quick definition. Financial reporting means actually just simply means giving stakeholders an accurate view of the company's financial position using numbers in a predefined structured format. These numbers, there are several different formats. These formats, whenever that stakeholder looks at it, they're able to understand the state of the business and even much more. I'll say that again so that you digest it beyond what is written on the screen. Financial reporting really means using numbers to show other people how well your business is faring. So if someone says, what are you doing? And you say, oh, my business is fine. And you say, okay, how well is it? How can you prove to me that the business is doing well? Financial reports are just books that you can give the person. And when the person sees it, the person understands that, okay, yes, the business is doing well, but it's not doing so well. Or the reason why it's in a predefined structure or format is so that anybody universally can see the books and understand. So somebody in Germany who speaks German can see the books in the same format, understand what it means, the same way somebody in England or in Tanzania or Rwanda or in Portugal will be able to look at those set of books and understand the state of your business. Foco, over to you.
Ok, donc nous allons commencer par une définition de ce que c'est que les rapports financiers. Vous devez comprendre que les rapports financiers, c'est tout simplement une façon de donner aux investisseurs et aux actionnaires de l'entreprise un aperçu global de la situation financière de l'entreprise à travers les chiffres. Donc, et retenez que c'est fait dans des formats prédéfinis. Ça veut dire que quel que soit le pays, quelle que soit la zone du monde où votre rapport financier doit être lu, la personne va facilement comprendre, puisque ce sont des tableaux conventionnels. Que vous soyez au Sénégal, en Côte d'Ivoire, au Rwanda, en Tunisie, quel que soit le pays où vous êtes, la façon de faire les rapports financiers, c'est presque la même chose. Donc, ce qu'on va vous indiquer aujourd'hui va vous aider à avoir des formes conventionnelles de rapports financiers. Over to you, Nadia.
Thank you, Foco. Ok. A primeira questão que aqui surge é o que é, na verdade, o relatório financeiro? Bom, basicamente, o relatório financeiro é uma forma de se informar as partes pertinentes, quer seja acionistas, quer seja sócios ou alguém que seja interessado no negócio, a ter uma visão correta, okay, da situação financeira do negócio. Este documento é gerado em modelos pré-definidos, ou seja, como que um modelo básico que é tão claro que qualquer um, pegando no relatório financeiro, seja onde a pessoa estiver, seja que língua a pessoa fale, seja esteja em Portugal, em Angola, nos Camarões, na Nigéria, ou onde for, a pessoa, ao pegar nesse relatório, entenderá exatamente a saúde, qual é a saúde financeira da empresa. Se a empresa está bem, se está a passar por dificuldades, tudo isso. Portanto, não é cada um com seu modelo, mas um modelo globalizado. Segun, over to you.
Okay. Now, the big question is, why do you keep financial reports? And that's a growing question, right? I run a very small business. It's a family business. It's owned by me. It's run by my wife. Why do I have to keep it, right? Number one is it is required by law for every individual and organizations to do this, actually. You might not know, for most of you, if you're in the Western world, you realize that no matter how little money a person makes, in the Western world, you're expected to file your tax reports. So actually, by law, even individuals are expected to give the government an account of how much money they receive and how they spend the money. I know many of us in Africa are surprised, but that's the truth. Now, it is even more important for organizations to do this. Number two, right? You keep financial reports, again, because you need to be able to know at all times the state of your business. You need to be able to show if its achievements, its performances, its failures, when it failed, and using numbers, show why it actually even failed. I mean, I cannot even emphasize this too much, right? It's very important to always know the state of your business. And using numbers via your financial reports, you're able to create an impartial, non-sentimental view of the state of your company. Number three, right? It helps management in their decision making. That is just straightforward and that is logical. I mean, once you're able to show and prove that this is the state of the business, the next thing for every good and wise or leadership is to say, now that I know the state of my business, what I need to be able to dissect why it's like this and make effective decisions to turn things around. Number four, and this is actually personal to me, it shows my stewardship and helps me remain accountable. For every time I personally have to create my financial books, I'm reminded of my obligations, right? To my investors, to my partners, to my staff, to my, if peradventure I take a loan at the bank, having it in your books reminds you that you also have a loan that is pending, which you have to settle. If you consider your stakeholders, there's many more reasons, and I'm going to explain that in the next slide, but over to you, Foko.
Ok, nous allons maintenant voir les différents points qui nous permettent d'avoir un rapport financier. Donc, premièrement, vous devez savoir que les rapports financiers sont imposés par la loi. Ça, c'est un point important pour chaque individu ou chaque organisation. Deuxièmement, les rapports financiers permettent de savoir à quel niveau vous vous trouvez de façon périodique. Donc, c'est une évaluation périodique de l'avancement de vos propres activités. Et ça, vous devez aussi le savoir. Donc, troisième chose, les rapports financiers permettent à l'organe de gestion, au management, de prendre des décisions efficaces parce qu'ils ont un élément qui leur permet de savoir exactement à quel niveau se trouve par rapport aux objectifs qu'ont se fixé l'entreprise et par rapport à la stratégie qui a été mise en place. Quatrièmement, sur un plan personnel, ça permet au chef d'entreprise d'être crédible et de savoir ses propres comptes afin de pouvoir se vendre auprès des autres partenaires comme les banquiers. Ça permet de savoir à quel niveau on se trouve. Et il faut toujours tenir compte que les lois...
I think we've lost Foko for a bit.
Okay.
Maybe Nadia
can I go ahead?
Okay. Nadia can continue.
Ok, thank you. Então, agora, a questão que se segue é o porquê de ter um relatório financeiro. Bem, O primeiro motivo de ter a primeira razão para ter um relatório financeiro é que a lei assim obriga. Ok? Nós temos que pagar impostos normalmente, anualmente, por aqueles rendimentos que nós geramos com os nossos negócios. Só isto já é um bom motivo para nós termos as nossas contas organizadas, para nós assim podermos fazer as nossas declarações de rendimento no final do ano ou no início do outro ano. Portanto, a própria lei. Depois, a segunda razão é que um relatório financeiro mostra-nos uma avaliação periódica do nosso negócio. Mostra se o negócio está a melhorar, se o negócio está a passar por um momento mais difícil, se precisa de mais atenção e por aí, ok? O terceiro motivo é que ele ajuda na tomada de decisões. Como? Eu olhando para o meu relatório financeiro, eu posso decidir se eu vou ou não fazer um empréstimo, se eu vou ou não investir mais, adquirir mais equipamentos, máquinas, ou contratar mais pessoal, como eu posso avaliar e tomar decisões baseadas no relatório financeiro. E a quarta, que o Segun diz que para ele até é pessoal, é que um relatório financeiro ajuda o chefe, o dono da empresa, a manter-se fiel nos seus compromissos. Seja o compromisso para com as partes interessadas, tanto quanto o seu compromisso, a sua responsabilização para com todos aqueles que estão envolvidos na empresa. Portanto, se a gente pensar nas partes interessadas, seja nos investidores, nos sócios e por aí, há muito mais razões para se ter um relatório financeiro numa empresa. Okay? Segun, over to you.
Thank you very much. The next slide. Again, a very, very pertinent question, and something I try not to overlook is to explain to people who are the stakeholders who need to have access to your books. Now, I will say this first because I had the question at the last session. People asked, are we expected to show our books to everybody? And the answer officially is no. By law, the only people who must publish their books, right, financial records every year are publicly listed liability company. In Nigeria, we call them public limited PLCs, public listed limited companies, right? If that's the case, you're expected to publish your books every year. Everybody has access to it. On the other hand, if that's not the case, you're allowed to keep your books private, but there are people that from time to time you see that you need to prepare your books so that you can show them because of the actions they need to take next. And I'll list them. So who are these stakeholders? First of all, you have your investors. Your investors need to be sure that the business is being run properly. You need to be sure that there's viability in what you're doing. Remember that using financial records, you're able to create an impartial, non-sentimental view of the state of the business. So your investors want to look at this to know that beyond their friendship with you, their personal relationship with you, you are doing well, and nothing does that better than your books. If they see this, they're able to say, okay, let me put in more money. And this is both for current investors and for future potential investors. For some of you, and I got a lot of emails from some of you. For some of you who are all asking me, how do I raise funds? How do I'm looking for, I have only, TEF is probably going to give me only $5,000 if I get in, but I need $20,000. It means that you're going to have to go and look outside for the remaining balance, right? Your investors need to be able to, this shows that you should start preparing your books as soon as your business starts so that you can show this to your investors and they give you more money. Again, it's very clear. Governments and tax agencies are stakeholders that need to see your book from time to time because they will come for you. Now, just imagine if they say, if you made $100,000 or $10,000, for instance, and they come and say, well, the tax due is $15,000. How are you going to manage it, right? The only way you can prove to these people that, oh, my tax cannot be $15,000 because first of all, I made $10,000 as profit and I have expenses that I have to pay for, is if you can show them your financial reports. Thirdly, your banks and your financial partners. Some of you might have to get loans to raise money, right? To be able to access bank portals, to be able to go to your banking officers and financial partners to say, oh, please, I'd like to collect a loan. you need to prove to them that you're running a viable business. You need to prove to them that you have good integrity. You need to prove to them that you are disciplined. You need to prove to them that you are actually investing in the business, and you're not going to go and use the money to maybe go on holiday or take care of your family need. The only way you can prove to your financial backers are by presenting to them your financial reports. Other people that might need to see them are, and I grouped these three together: your partners, management teams, and your staff. Partners, of course, for you to make effective decisions, you need to be able to have reports. Management teams, I mean, if you are a company that has, and I saw it in the chat, somebody said, I have different products. If you're a company that has different products and you have different business units, right? Each one business unit, you don't want one business unit to be dragging the other one down, or you want to know which of these business units you should shut down because it's not profitable. The only way you can prove this or check this out is if you have proper financial recordings and reports. I mean, again, it's not really always about shutting down. Sometimes you just need to motivate the team. So say the highest revenue generating units will give you an extra bonus. The business manager in charge of that unit needs to be able to know that, oh, I need to push my team to produce fantastic results. Those ones that are not doing so well, they also need to be able to see this so that they can also improve on their activities. Lastly, are your staffs. Do you know how reassuring it is when your staff know that the business is doing well? And it's not a case of, oh, I heard the business is doing well. No, imagine if they see the financial reports and they see, well, the business is doing well. Business is being managed properly. Nobody's embezzling money. You know what it does? It reassures them, and they actually stay longer with you. For future team as well, people want to come to a company that can pay their salaries month in, month out. I mean, I've heard of cases where people are employed and from the very first month, there's even no money to pay the salary. After 3 months, they leave. I mean, now smart, especially Gen Zs, smart, younger prospective employees tend to ask, how well is the company doing? Have you raised money? How are you spending the money? And these are questions you want to be able to answer so that you can actually get the best hands for your team. Over to you, Foko.
Thank you, Segun. Donc, maintenant, nous allons voir quelques utilisations d'un rapport financier. Vous voyez par exemple que les différentes personnes à qui un rapport financier peut être utile s'appellent les parties prenantes. Donc, nous avons par exemple comme première partie prenante les partenaires, qui sont des personnes qui ont une collaboration permanente avec vous. Il est important qu'ils aient une bonne vue de votre entreprise. Et les différents états financiers que vous allez les soumettre leur permettent à chaque partenaire de pouvoir tirer son intérêt et voir comment est-ce que votre entreprise se comporte ou comment votre entreprise peut évoluer. Il y a aussi l'équipe de gestion, le management. C'est aussi important pour le management de connaître le rapport financier parce que ça permet, par exemple, de fidéliser, que ce soit même le directeur général ou les principaux employés, ou même lorsqu'on veut recruter. Lorsqu'on veut recruter de nouvelles personnes, il est important pour eux d'avoir une perception de l'entreprise à travers ses états financiers. Ça permet aussi de captiver les prochains employés. Pareil pour les banquiers et les autres investisseurs, mais je pense qu'il n'a pas encore tout fait. Over to you, Nadia.
Thank you, Foko. Então, nós falamos em importância de ter os relatores financeiros. A seguir, nós queremos falar sobre quem é que tem o direito ou quem são as pessoas interessadas que devem ter acesso ao seu relatório financeiro. Bem, para começar, o teu relatório financeiro não deve estar exposto a toda a gente, ok? Somente as empresas públicas têm a obrigação de apresentar anualmente o seu relatório financeiro. Então, tendo que o teu negócio não é uma empresa pública, quem são as partes interessadas? Bem, a primeira pessoa interessada seriam os investidores. Investidores porque são pessoas que estão a colocar dinheiro no negócio, ou colocaram dinheiro no negócio. Elas têm que entender que o dinheiro que elas colocaram está a gerar qualquer coisa. Elas não podem ficar com a percepção, deram dinheiro, não sabem o que se passa, e daqui a um tempo vai dizer que, olha, não deu nada, a empresa faliu. Não. Tens que fazer esse relatório financeiro e apresentar regularmente para incentivá-los que sim, fizeram um bom investimento e, eventualmente, se for necessário mais, que eles possam colocar. A seguir, nós temos que olhar para o governo, mais exatamente a nossa obrigação fiscal, não é? Sim, por quê? Porque o governo pode ter a percepção de que você gerou muito mais lucro do que você, na verdade, fez. Ok? Por quê? Porque você faz as transações que você faz, está registrada. Eu não sei, dependendo dos vossos países. Aqui em São Tomé, tem-se agora o sistema de fatura. Logo, toda a contabilidade, todo o lucro que entra é registrado pelas finanças, e eles assumem que você fez todo aquele dinheiro. Mas, na verdade, você tem contas que pagou, tem despesas que acumulou. Nesse caso, é importante que o governo, a finanças, tenha conhecimento do seu relatório financeiro. Depois há também o banco. O banco, por quê? Porque o banco, você eventualmente pode ir ao banco pedir crédito, e o banco quer saber qual é a saúde financeira dessa empresa, como é que essa empresa esteve nos últimos tempos, para saber se pode ou não pode, se vai ou não vai investir. Portanto, essa é a terceira entidade que tem direito de ver o seu relatório financeiro. Depois, no outro grupo, nós temos os sócios e os diretores da empresa. Portanto, são pessoas que estão envolvidas na empresa e dessa forma, precisam de saber que, olha, o meu futuro está assegurado, ou eu estou num caminho certo, faço parte de uma organização que tem saúde e que, eventualmente, vai vincar. E, para terminar, e não menos importante, são os nossos colaboradores. Nossos colaboradores também precisam de ter a certeza de que a empresa está saudável, de que a empresa está a ir no bom caminho, porque ninguém quer estar trabalhando um dia, chegar e encontrar a porta fechada porque a empresa faliu e tudo acabou. Portanto, essas são as pessoas que a elas lhes interessa saber o que se passa com o vosso negócio. Shagun, over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So we're going deeper. If you have a pen and a paper, this is where you start writing, right? Now, when it comes to financial reports, there are what I call 4 value books. I don't think it's a globally accepted term to call them value books, but I heard it from somebody, and I just love the word value books. Now, there are 4 value books. These are called the 4 pillars of financial reporting books. Now, there are other financial reports that people create depending on the stage of the business, but these are the 4 main ones, right? We have the balance sheet, we have the income statement, we have the cash flow statement, and we have the equity change document. As we go on, I'll define most of them. Over to you. Foko.
Oui, donc nous allons ici vous partager les 4 principales valeurs, dont les 4 principaux états financiers. On a premièrement le bilan, on a ensuite le compte de résultats, qu'on appelle souvent compte de pertes et profits. Ensuite, nous avons le tableau de financement et enfin le tableau des participations et de tous les mouvements d'action. Donc, on va les voir maintenant en détail. Nadia.
Thank you, Foucault. Então, aqui estão 4 pilares do relatório financeiro, ok? Esses são a folha de balanço, ok? A declaração de renda, o fluxo de caixa e o documento de estoques. Basicamente, esses são os 4 pilares que um relatório financeiro deve ter, e nós vamos ver de seguida em detalhes cada um desses relatórios. Shagun, over to you.
All right, thank you very much. Now, there are several terminologies we would see as we go into these 4 value books, but I would love to define it and explain some of them. I think if you understand only this part of the course, I think I'll be very fulfilled. And I'll start with the top here. What are your assets? Assets refers to anything the company owns. Now, there are fixed assets and there are current assets. Depending on, so fixed assets are those assets that are difficult, a little bit more difficult to convert to cash. You own it, but you cannot just flip it and it becomes cash. For example, fixed assets could be the building you have, the cars you use for your team. Now, the type of business determines whether you classify an asset as fixed asset or a current asset. For example, if you sell cars and the cars in your pool are to be sold, even though they look like physical, heavy vehicles, even though they look like physical assets, right? They are not fixed assets because you are selling cars, right? So they can easily, as far as your business is concerned, they are the fastest things that you can turn from cash, from assets to cash. Current assets are those things that are closer to cash. For example, real cash itself, cash in the bank is easy to get, and on and on, right? Liabilities refers to everything you owe, whether you owe them to your vendors, you owe to your landlords, you owe to anybody you owe, money that you owe that doesn't belong to the company by itself, any assets, anything of value that doesn't belong to the company and it belongs to another person and you owe is a liability. Revenue is how much the company makes. Anything that comes into the company, how much do you make? For example, if you have 10 baskets of fruit, you're a farmer, you have 10 baskets of fruit and you take it to the farm. At that time, it is not yet revenue, it's still an asset, right? It's just a current asset, meaning that you can easily change it to cash. As soon as it gets to the market and it is sold and money comes in, the money that comes in is classified as revenue. Cost of goods sold, COGS, we call it COGS. COGS is an acronym for the cost of goods sold. So it refers to any expense you have to make in order to produce an item that you can sell and generate revenue. I will take that again. The cost of goods sold is any cost a business incurs in able to produce an item or a service that it sells. And I'll give you an example of cost of goods sold. So again, I will try and not use fruits. Let me use, for example, if you sell phones and large equipment, right? You have to buy the phone at a certain price. Let's assume you have your shop. You have to go to the other market, the bigger market where they sell it at cheaper prices to acquire the phone. That's the cost of goods sold. The amount that you use in entering a vehicle from going from your own place to where you can buy the phone and bringing it back is part of your costs. Things like the cost of the team that is required to sell the phone is the cost of goods sold. Any expenses involved in selling that particular product directly is the cost of goods sold. If you notice it, I put a versus total expenses as well. The difference between your cost of goods sold and total expenses is that in total expenses, there is a part of your expenses that is a part. So cost of goods sold is part of your expenses. But when you talk about total expenses, it also refers to other costs associated with running your business that is not directly related to that particular product that was sold. For example, again, we're looking at the phones, right? If, for example, you have to rent a shop, now whether or not you sell your phone, you have to still make that expense, right? If, for example, you have a boss for all your staff in that phone company, whether or not they go to the market to buy the phones to sell, it's already part of your cost, is a part of your total expenses. So anything that you spend is your expense, but any part of it that refers to making, producing, or acquiring the goods that you would now resell is part of your cost of goods sold. Next definition is capital. Of course, capital is how much comes in the business into a business that it can be added to the business to run the business. It could be initial capital or it could be investor capital. As long as the money is being added to the company and is available to the company to do business, it's considered part of your capital. Again, profit is, of course, profit is the excesses, is the extra you keep for the company after removing the cost of goods sold from your revenue. I will say that again. Profit is the excess a company gets to keep for itself after it has removed all its expenses from the money it generated as revenue. Over to you, Foko.
Oui, ici, dans ce premier tableau, nous allons déjà commencer par vous expliquer l'actif, le passif et le revenu et les charges. Donc, l'actif, c'est l'ensemble de tous les biens de l'entreprise et généralement, nous avons deux types d'actifs. Nous avons les actifs durables et les actifs courants. Les actifs courants, c'est lorsque c'est par exemple le compte bancaire ou une marchandise que vous avez en main. Donc, c'est un ensemble de choses qui peuvent rapidement devenir du cash que vous avez en main. Donc, c'est ça l'actif. Et à côté de l'actif, nous avons maintenant le passif. Le passif, c'est l'ensemble des ressources qui ont permis d'acquérir les actifs. Dans ce passif, nous pouvons avoir par exemple le capital ou les fonds propres qui sont l'ensemble des fonds mis à disposition par les propriétaires de l'entreprise. Ça peut être le capital, comme je l'ai dit, ou le compte courant. Donc, à côté de ça, il y a d'autres dettes qui permettent aussi d'avoir l'actif au sein de l'entreprise. Ça peut être les fournisseurs, l'État, etc., ou les prêts bancaires. Donc, pour ce qui concerne les revenus, vous devez retenir ici que le revenu, c'est la transformation d'un actif lorsqu'on le vend, donc la transformation d'un actif en cash. Comme par exemple, si vous avez de la marchandise au champ, si vous avez de la patate qui sort du champ, ce n'est pas encore un revenu. Mais dès que cette patate est vendue, ça devient un revenu. Et à côté de ces revenus, on va opposer les charges. Exemple de charges, nous avons par exemple les coûts directs. Les coûts directs, ce sont les coûts directement qui sont liés à ce qu'on vend, aux biens qui sont vendus. Par exemple, pour faire la patate, vous avez la sémence. Et en fonction de la tonne de patates vendue, on peut savoir facilement quelle est la tonne de sémence utilisée, quelle est la tonne d'engrais utilisée, et ainsi de suite. Donc, à côté de ça, pour pouvoir équilibrer toutes les dépenses et les charges de l'entreprise, on a aussi les coûts indirects, comme par exemple la climatisation ou le salaire des personnes, des employés administratifs. Ce sont des gens qui sont payés quel que soit le niveau d'activité de l'entreprise. Donc, voilà pour ce qu'il en est jusqu'à ce moment. Over to you, Nadia.
Thank you, Foucault. Bom, nós vamos aprender agora alguns termos usados quando está-se a fazer um relatório financeiro, ok? Começamos pelo ativo. Ativo nós temos dois tipos. Temos o ativo fixo e temos o ativo corrente. Onde o ativo corrente é aquilo que pode se facilmente transformar em dinheiro. Seja dinheiro no banco ou uma mercadoria que pode ser vendida e transformada em dinheiro. Depois do ativo nós temos os passivos. Passivo é tudo aquilo que pertence ao negócio e pertence basicamente ao negócio, né? E nós temos depois a receita. A receita, o que é a receita? A receita é a venda, basicamente. É aquilo que se tem em troca do nosso produto ou nosso serviço, ok? Diferenciar que a receita não é o lucro, ok? O lucro é a receita menos a despesa. Portanto, a receita é só aquele produto de venda imediata ou de conversão do nosso serviço ou produto pelo dinheiro. O que ele tem aí, COGS, ou Cost of Goods Sold, que pode-se dizer em português custo do produto vendido, é basicamente o custo de produção. Quer dizer, todo o custo associado para produzir um produto que eu vou vender, ok? Seja, por exemplo, ele deu o exemplo de um telemóvel. Se vendes um telemóvel, tu vais comprar em algum sítio para revender, o que é que vai ser o custo aqui o COGS? Vai ser o custo o custo de produção, vai ser o custo de transporte que eu pagar até chegar ali, o custo de compra dessa mercadoria, o custo se eu tiver que ter uma equipa para vender, o custo de embalagem, se eu tiver que embalar, portanto, todo o custo associado a este negócio. Enquanto que já o custo fixo é um custo que nós temos mesmo tendo ou não vendido. Ou seja, esse custo não tá associado à venda, mas está associado à existência do negócio. Por exemplo, a renda, a conta de luz, conta de segurança, quem paga segurança e por aí. Portanto, são despesas já incluídas o que está no nosso negócio, tanto nós estamos a produzir como não, estamos a vender como não. Depois nós temos a despesa total. O que é essa despesa total? É basicamente o custo fixo e o custo de produção. E o capital o que é? O capital é todo e qualquer dinheiro colocado no negócio, seja ele no início ou depois, basta que seja dinheiro investido no negócio para gerar mais negócio. O que mais para saber aqui? Falamos do lucro, ou falamos do capital, é basicamente isso. Outras terminologias, depois, com o tempo, vamos aprender. Okay? Shagun, over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I can see some questions. I'll answer them as we go on, but for time, let's just go to the rest of the slides. I'm sure your questions are being collated, and if you stay towards the end, you will get answers. Very quickly, I'm just going to go through defining the value books, right? And maybe we could just jump into the question and answer. It will help us, clarify most of what we discussed so that you can actually take value away from this. Now, the balance sheet, which is one of the first books in the value amongst my 4 value books, it's very simple. It's just a snapshot. So at every instant in time, you want to understand how much a company owns in terms of its assets versus how much a company owes, both in terms of to vendors, to customers, in cases where you have to return goods back, you have return books and you have to refund funds, to loans, to even in terms of equity. So the amount you owe the investors that have invested in your business, you owe them money actually. It's not as if they dashed the money they gave you, it's an investment. So you owe them something back. That entire amount you owe and the amount you own, everything displayed in one single document can be classified as, at that particular time, can be classified as the balance sheet. It's very important because it shows, it's like a financial health assessment of the company and helps measures whether the company is losing assets too quickly or whether it's increasing assets. Foko.
Oui, le premier document que nous allons mieux expliquer, c'est le bilan. Le bilan, c'est en fait une façon de visualiser tous les biens de l'entreprise ainsi que tout ce que l'entreprise doit à d'autres personnes. C'est pour ça que tout à l'heure, on vous a défini l'actif et passif. Donc, l'actif, c'est tout ce qui appartient à la société et qui permet à l'entreprise de produire. Et le passif, c'est tout ce que l'entreprise doit aux gens, toutes les ressources que l'entreprise doit aux gens. Et tous ces éléments sont importants parce que c'est à travers ce document qu'on peut apprécier la santé de l'entreprise et savoir à un moment précis, il faut dire le bilan est toujours fait à un moment précis. Donc, généralement, on arrête le bilan. Donc, on arrête les comptes, on arrête tout, on mesure et on évalue ce que vaut l'entreprise à travers le bilan. Donc, ça permet de savoir si les avoirs de l'entreprise augmentent ou diminuent. Nadia.
Thank you, Foko. Ok, então, o primeiro documento que vamos olhar, nós falamos dos 4 pilares, né? Este é o primeiro. O primeiro é a folha de balanço, o balancete. Há várias expressões, né? E o que é isso? Isso é basicamente uma imagem, uma visão do que a empresa possui e do que a empresa deve. Basicamente, o que a empresa possui em termos financeiros, ok? Nós falamos dos ativos, seja ele corrente, seja ele fixo, e em relação às suas obrigações. Se tiver dívidas, se tiver obrigações financeiras, qualquer que seja. É basicamente aqui uma imagem dessa diferença para nós podermos, de uma forma rápida, olhar e ver qual é a saúde financeira da empresa. Ok? Esse é um relatório do momento. Ok? E pode-se avaliar ao longo do tempo para ver como é que a empresa tem progredido, como é que a empresa tem evoluído ou não. É basicamente isso que se olha na folha de balanço ou no balancete. Okay? O que a empresa tem, o que a empresa possui e o que a empresa deve. Shagun, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is an example of one. This is a snapshot for different years. So year 1 in this particular business, year 2, year 3, right? If you notice it, all the assets, anytime you open any balance sheet, any financial report that is a balance sheet. The first thing you see on the top is assets. So if you look at what has been done here, the sum of all the assets is listed and the sum of all the liabilities. I remember when I talked about liabilities, it's everything the company owns, which is the assets, is on the top, and everything the company owes is at the bottom. I remember when I talked about everything the company owes, it includes both the liabilities and the equity. In this case, liabilities are on the top, and then the equities are at the bottom. Now, some points to note when looking at it at a balance sheet. The first things that are listed is there's a particular order that is every balance sheet is drawn out. It starts with your most liquid assets, which obviously is cash in hand, then maybe cash in your safe. If you have a safe in the office, then cash in your bank, then money that people are owing you, which is also cash. I mean, they're owing you just to pay you for it. That is account receivables. Then you have things like your inventory, which is, if you notice it turns from readily available to cash that can be converted easily, then to cash that is difficult to convert. That is where you have your non-current assets, right? So it always starts from your most liquid assets down to your least liquid assets. The same thing goes for your liability. Your liability is listed from the one that you have to pay, your most pressing expenses down to your loans. I mean, and quite naturally, your investors are long-term investors, so they are the last people you want to pay back, right? Your most liquid or urgent liabilities down to your least liquid liabilities. And the last thing I always want to point out about the balance sheet, it is called a balance sheet because when properly created, the total amount of your assets is usually equal to the total amount of your liabilities. I mean, look at what we have here. In the first year, 21,448 for assets. Liabilities also the same thing. Second year, 110. If you look here, it's 110. It's always like that. That is why it's called a balance sheet. So if you create a balance sheet and it doesn't balance, it means maybe you're missing out on recording some financial transactions or something. Over to you, Foko.
OK, nous allons commencer par vous expliquer le bilan. Dans le bilan, vous avez en haut l'actif et en bas le passif. Dans l'actif, vous avez un ensemble de biens à commencer. Bon, il faut déjà dire que la présentation anglo-saxonne de l'actif et la présentation francophone n'est pas la même chose. Parce que dans la présentation anglo-saxonne, l'actif courant est en haut, alors que dans la présentation francophone, l'actif courant est en bas. Donc, l'actif non courant se trouve en bas, alors que dans la présentation francophone, l'actif permanent, comme on appelle souvent, est en haut. De toute façon, dans l'actif courant, vous avez par exemple la trésorerie, le montant de compte bancaire, vous avez les créances, vous avez les inventories, ça veut dire les stocks. Donc voilà tout ce que l'entreprise a et qui est liquide à court terme. Et dans les actifs non courants ou permanents, vous avez par exemple les immeubles, le terrain, les véhicules, la logistique, les constructions. Pour ce qui est maintenant du passif, au passif, vous avez le même phénomène. Le passif circulant, c'est comment on appelle souvent en français. Le passif circulant, chez les anglo-saxons, se trouve en haut, alors que chez les francophones, ça se trouve en bas. Et le passif permanent se trouve en bas chez les anglo-saxons et en haut chez les francophones. Donc, pour ce qui est donc du passif circulant, on a dans le compte bancaire quand il est négatif, dans la trésorerie négative. On a aussi toutes les dettes que nous avons, les dettes à court terme qu'on a envers les gens, par exemple le personnel. Et on a ensuite les dettes à long terme. Et enfin, nous avons le capital qui est un montant à long terme, aussi bien que tous les apports faits par les actionnaires. Donc, et en anglais, il a expliqué, on dit balance sheet, qui veut dire en fait équilibre. Donc, en français, c'est bilan, mais en anglais, c'est équilibre. Et la particularité du bilan, c'est que les actifs doivent toujours être égalisés avec les passifs. Donc, ça veut dire que si l'actif n'est pas égal au passif, c'est que vous avez un problème dans vos comptes. Et vous avez remarqué que les bilans prévisionnels se font toujours sur plusieurs années. Ici, nous voyons que ça s'est découlé sur 4 ans. Merci. Nadia, over to you.
Thank you, Foko. Então, olhando de novo continuando a olhar para a folha de balanço, o balancete, este é um exemplo de um balancete. Temos aqui 4 anos, ok? O que é para notar aqui? É que nós temos em cima os ativos e embaixo nós temos os passivos. Ativo, como nós temos todo ativo. Ativo é basicamente aquilo que a empresa possui, né? Então, seja ele fixo como não, seja ele propriedade, seja dinheiro do banco, sejam contas, cliente, imagina que vocês entregaram produtos a cliente, o cliente vem a pagar. Isso vem aqui no account receivable ou no que está para receber. Inventário é o que a empresa tem. Propriedades, tudo isso vem nos ativos. E depois nos passivos vem todas as obrigações, não a responsabilidade. Seja eles se tiverem crédito no banco, sem pagar impostos, se têm que pagar alguma cota especial, enfim, tudo vem aqui embaixo nos passivos, ok? E outra coisa que tem que notar aqui, é interessante, é que este documento é chamado de folha de balanço, o balancete, porque ele se balança. Se vocês verem aí, o total de ativo é sempre igual ao total do passivo em cada ano, tanto no ano 1, ano 2, ano 3, ano 4, e é sempre igual, ok? Daí o fato dela se chamar de folha de balanço. Se vocês fizerem e notarem uma diferença entre o vosso ativo e o total do ativo e o total do passivo, então voltem atrás e verifiquem porque deve haver alguma coisa errada, ok? É basicamente isso no folha de balanço. Chega over to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking this. Income statements. Most of you know it as the profit and loss account, right? As it is, income statement or profit and loss account, it just shows the profitability of a company. It shows if a company is making excess or extra. Okay, let me. I saw a question from George and Charity that I should expatiate profits versus loss. I think this is where the answer comes in, right? Sometimes, by the time you look at how much you made and how much you spent, what you spent is more than what you made. If what you spent is more than what you made, the company is said to be making a loss or on a loss run. If what you spend is less than what the company makes, right, the company is said to be profitable, right? To be able to see clearly whether a company is profitable or running on a loss, you can find this out by studying the income statement. So the income statement is that statement that shows the profitability of the company. It lists the sales, which shows your revenue, and also lists your expenses, which shows your expenditures. Over to you, Foko.
Oui, maintenant nous sommes sur le compte de résultats. Le compte de résultats permet de savoir si l'entreprise est rentable ou pas. Ici, on essaie d'équilibrer toute la liste des charges et des dépenses avec la liste des revenus. C'est pour ça que souvent on l'appelle le compte de perte et profit. Et c'est cet élément qui permet, c'est ce tableau qui permet de savoir si l'entreprise est rentable ou pas, ou est profitable ou pas. Over to you, Nadia.
Thanks, Foucault. Bom, a seguir, o segundo documento, o segundo pilar é a declaração de renda. O que a declaração de renda faz? A declaração de renda é basicamente um documento que permite nos saber se a empresa é ou não, está ou não a dar lucros, ok? Se a empresa tem ou não tem saúde financeira. É basicamente isso que o documento de declaração de rendas dá-nos a conhecer. E o segundo estava a dizer também que isso está a responder à questão de alguém, que alguém havia colocado no grupo. Portanto, se tiverem questões, podem colocar também no chat. Shagun, over to you.
All right, thank you very much. I have here a sample of what it looks like. Now, the beautiful thing about this example or sample document of the profit and loss statement is that I am able to show with this particular document how much money comes in per product. I'm able to show the cost of goods sold, which is my direct expenses, and I'm just going to list it out here. So all my revenue is at the very top. Now, for some of you, and I saw questions from Augustine and Jacob, that how do you record if you're having two different services or you're selling two different products, how do you list it? So for example, if you're selling milk, you put your milk at the very top. So you can always break it down, right? Remember this document is for you. You're not a slave to the document. This document is a slave to you. So you can use it as appropriate. So if you have 1,000 goods, you can always list all your major products and say, this is my revenue. Now, remember when we talked about cost of goods sold, which is all costs directly associated with this, with whatever revenue came in, right? If you deduct your revenue, you deduct the cost of goods sold, which is your direct cost from your revenue, you have what we call the gross profit. And I saw a question about what's the difference between a gross profit and net profit, right? Your gross profit is your profit after deducting the total cost of goods sold from your revenue. But that's not all your expenses. Remember, you still have things like your salaries, buildings, administration. If you're taking insurance for your property, for your assets, you have your insurance. If you're buying licenses for your computer licenses, softwares, all those other expenses that are not part of your direct costs in producing whatever you sell. I mean, those are also expenses, right? If you now deduct all this, right, these other expenses, and if you deduct all these expenses, you have what you call your operating profit. Now, your operating profit is the profit when you consider how much you make after all your expenses as a business for that period, of course, we're doing for that period, right? But that's not also all your expenses. You might still have to go and file when you pay your tax, or maybe you collected a loan from the bank and you have to pay your interest. All these expenses are not part of the expenses in running your business, but they're still expenses. Now, when you deduct every expense you have in running your business from your revenue, you now have what you call your net profit or your profit after tax, depending on what your accountant decides to label it as. But your net profit is the profit or the money that you make, right, after you've deducted all your expenses, all your obligations to all third parties. Your operating profit is your profit you make after deducting all the expenses within running the business. And then your gross profit is profit you make after you deducted all the expenses directly related to producing whatever goods or services you give to your customers. Over to you, Foko.
Donc, nous allons commencer de là à vous expliquer la première phase du compte de résultats ou le compte de perte et profit. À commencer par le revenu. Le revenu ici, il sera question pour vous de montrer comment est-ce que les revenus de votre entreprise sont constitués. Dans le cas présent, on a par exemple le revenu des payants entreprises et le revenu des clients standards et les revenus issus des petites et moyennes entreprises. Donc, après ça, nous avons les coûts directs et tout de suite après les coûts directs, nous avons la marge brute. Vous devez comprendre que les coûts directs, c'est toutes les charges qui ont permis d'avoir les biens qui sont vendus. C'est pour ça que la marge brute nous permet, lorsqu'on prend le premier solde que nous avons. À la suite, nous avons comme charge les salaires, les coûts administratifs, la maintenance, l'assurance, le transport. Et à l'issue lorsqu'on retire toutes ces charges de la marge brute, nous retrouvons maintenant le profit opérationnel. Ça, c'est en anglais. En français, je pense que c'est l'excédent brut d'exploitation. Lorsqu'on a extrait toutes les charges d'exploitation. Donc, à la suite de cela, en retirant les intérêts, c'est le coût de l'emprunt et de la dette que l'entreprise a dû certainement contracter. Et lorsqu'on retire aussi les taxes, donc, parce que vous savez, toute entreprise doit payer des impôts, lorsqu'on retire le montant de la taxe, on se retrouve donc à la fin avec ce qu'on appelle le bénéfice net. Donc, le bénéfice net, c'est l'excédent brut d'exploitation moins les intérêts et les taxes, les intérêts financiers, je précise bien, et les taxes. Donc, voilà de façon globale résumé le compte de perte et profit. Over to you, Nadia.
Thank you, Foco. Então, como estávamos a dizer, o segundo documento, o segundo pilar é a declaração de renda. E nós dissemos que a declaração de renda basicamente diz-nos se a empresa está saudável financeiramente ou não. Ok? E então, o que é que nós podemos olhar aqui? Nós temos, em cima, nós temos a receita. Ok? A receita é basicamente aquilo que você recebe em troco do seu serviço ou produto. E depois nós temos aqui o custo ou direto, ou seja, o custo do produto, o custo de produção. Quando nós fizemos essa diferença entre a receita e o custo direto, nós temos um lucro que nós chamamos de lucro bruto. Por que lucro bruto? É lucro bruto porque esse lucro só foi extraído ainda o custo direto de produção. Okay? Como naquele exemplo que nós dissemos do telemóvel, nós podemos falar, ok, imagina que vendes bolos. Então, o custo direto de produção seria desde a compra da matéria-prima, o custo, se gastaste luz elétrica para fazer o bolo e tudo, se embalaste o bolo e pagaste alguém para vender o bolo, tudo isso é o custo direto de produção. Mas há outros custos associados. Há custo por trás, há o escritório, há a luz, a água, se tu pagas a internet, há salários de pessoas físicas, pessoas permanentes, se tens que ter alguma licença para poder vender. E tudo isso são outros custos que entram depois. Ok? Que entram depois e que vão fazer com que o teu lucro agora passe a ser um lucro líquido, ok? A quem chama de lucro líquido, a quem chama lucro antes da taxa. Por quê? Porque ainda falta a obrigação financeira, não é? A obrigação de pagar ao governo os impostos, ok? Portanto, nós temos as receitas. Da receita nós tiramos o custo direto de produção, nós temos o lucro bruto, e deste lucro bruto nós extraímos todo o outro lucro, portanto, toda outra despesa associada, desde salários, aluguéis, licenças, enfim, para nós termos o lucro líquido ou o lucro antes do imposto. E depois nós pagamos impostos e, no fim, nós temos o que é verdadeiramente o lucro. E por isso, há que prestar atenção que este é que nos diz a saúde financeira da empresa. Muitas vezes nós assumimos aqui o lucro grosso e olhamos e dizemos, a empresa está dando lucro, mas não, só está dando lucro quando a gente olhar para o lucro depois de pagar-se a taxa ou excluir-se o valor dos impostos. Shagun, over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So, cash flow statement, and I saw a couple of questions, right? Collins asked, for revenue, do I calculate amount people are owing me? Now, because that good has been sold, and I'm going to start with Collins' question to answer this next book. Now, because you've sold that product, right, it's no more in your store. It's considered revenue. Or in some cases, some customers pay you in advance. Some customers pay you on the day the goods is being sold and delivered. Some people will say, oh, 30 days time, I will pay you. Now, in the income statement, you have to list it as revenue. So yes, revenue also includes money that is being owed to you, but it has been sold, so you've used revenue. However, there is a book, a value book, which shows real cash transactions. So it shows real cash, real currency transactions, and that is the cash flow statement. This is the most important book because it shows whether a company can pay salaries in 3 months or not if nothing comes into a company. The cash flow statement is considered a book that shows the liquidity of any company. It shows the movement of cash in and out. I'll stop there and I'll explain later. Foco, over to you, please.
Oui, le tableau de trésorerie est un tableau très important. Parce que tout à l'heure, lorsqu'on vous a parlé des revenus et des ventes, vous devez savoir qu'il y a des situations où vous vendez, mais vous n'avez pas des encaissements. Et pour autant, c'est un revenu, mais ce n'est pas du cash. Avec le tableau de trésorerie, vous savez exactement qu'est-ce qui entre et qu'est-ce qui sort. Et en fonction de vos engagements, vous pouvez faire une planification de façon à savoir si d'ici 3 mois, vous aurez des problèmes à payer les salaires ou pas. Donc, voilà l'importance du tableau de trésorerie. Pouvoir identifier tout ce qui entre et tout ce qui sort et matérialiser ça dans un tableau qui s'appelle le tableau de trésorerie. Nadia.
Thank you, Foucault. Então, o terceiro pilar é a demonstração do fluxo de caixa, basicamente. O que é o fluxo de caixa? Qual é a utilidade deste? Este é basicamente um documento que mostra o que, como o próprio nome diz, é um fluxo de caixa, né? Mostra o dinheiro, a entrada e saída de dinheiro. E qual é a utilidade? Basicamente, a utilidade é ajudar-nos a planear, porque ele basicamente dá o aspecto da tesouraria. Ele mostra o dinheiro que entra, o dinheiro que sai, ajuda a analisar e a planear. Em mais detalhe, nós veremos daqui a pouco. Shagun, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So at this point in time, I'm going to say this. If you have, we've passed the hour mark. If you have, and this was meant to be for 30 minutes. If you have any questions, just drop it in the chat room and we'll try and address as many as possible. If you have any questions, I think it's time you start typing it so that it can be collected and we'll answer them. I'm going to skip some slides. Again, cash flow statements, liquidity of the company. I'll share my slides to Tef, and they will probably send it to you and you can look through it. Again, it just shows you what comes in, what goes out. Let me jump to this. Very important feedback. And this is my personal advice to you as business owners. Remember this, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, but the most important book is your cash flow statement. It is king. This is a personal feedback to you, right? Because first of all, your balance sheet shows how big your empire is, right? It shows how much you own. It could just be your ego. You can have 20 factories and then it is built with loan. You don't really have anything, but it's big. Your balance sheet is good, it's ego. The second is profitability. You know, it shows that at least you're making extra. It shows that people value the service you give them. Again, it shows that it more likely gives reasons why you're in business, right? To make money, satisfying people's needs, and then making money in return. And that's what your profit and loss statement does. It gives you sanity, it shows the business. But the third part, which is your cash flow statement, and seeing that you are positive in your cash flow statement is everything. It's the reason why you can actually keep your door open for business. If you don't have money, you cannot pay your generators, you cannot pay salaries, and you don't know where money is coming in, and there's nothing in the bank, and you can't get a loan, you probably just shut down, right? So it's always very important, right, to take note and have your eye on your cash flow statement. The cash flow statement is the most grounded books in reality, and it matters more than anything else. I don't know, Foucault, could you just go through that quickly so that we go to the next slide?
Okay, thank you, Shagun. Donc, on est très rapidement passé sur un tableau de trésorerie. Et puis là, maintenant, nous sommes sur une valeur, une citation de Alan Mills, qui dit « Le revenu est ma fierté, le profit est ma santé, mais le cash est mon roi. » Donc, il dit ici que le premier, la fierté, est à propos de notre propre fierté, notre ego. Ça, c'est le revenu, le fait de savoir que notre activité génère des revenus, on fait des ventes. La deuxième chose, qui est le profit, c'est la raison d'être et c'est même pour ça que notre business fonctionne, c'est-à-dire la rentabilité, lorsqu'on fait des profits.
Nadia.
Ça montre que l'activité est tout de même. C'est ce qui permet de rester ouvert, c'est ce qui permet à l'entreprise de ne pas fermer. Parce que tant qu'on n'a pas de cash, on ne peut faire aucun achat. Donc, le tableau de trésorerie est le tableau qui montre le plus l'activité de terrain, la réalité. Donc, tant qu'on a du cash, je pense que tout va très bien pour tout le monde. Nadia.
Thank you, Foucault. Então, primeiramente é saber que esta apresentação vai ser disponibilizada a TEF poderá partilhar convosco. Portanto, ele está aqui a fugir alguns slides por causa do tempo. Aqui ele começa com essa frase que diz que a receita é vaidade, o lucro é sanidade e o cash, o dinheiro, né, é rei. Sim, porque sem o dinheiro tu não consegues fazer nada. Tu podes ter muitas propriedades, ter muito inventário e ter muito produto na mão dos clientes, para os clientes pagarem, mas se não tiveres dinheiro como está, não consegues pagar as contas, não consegues pagar salário, não consegues movimentar o negócio. Então, o livro ou a demonstração do fluxo de caixa é um documento, segundo o Shegun, é o documento mais importante, é o documento que tens que ter em mão a qualquer momento, ok? É o documento ao qual deves prestar muita atenção e ter sempre, porque ele diz realmente que tu estás a movimentar dinheiro. Tu podes dizer que tem propriedades, tem isso, tem aquilo, mas se não tem dinheiro, não fazes negócio. Para quem tem questões, por favor, colocar no chat. Shegun, over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I think I'm going to skip the equity chain documents. Again, please, if you have any questions on the first three, because those are the really more important books, please share it on the chat so that I can be collected. Okay, yeah, I think I can skip the last one because let me skip this. Let me move straight to best practices. And these are where the bulk of the questions come in, right? Where do I start? How do I handle my books? What can I do? I'll tell people, start small. Start when your business is very small and start already. Again, it's all about keeping records, right? Any single expense you have, write it out on in a book. Any single income you make, write it out. Just start already. Secondly is, now, I saw a lot of questions about how do I prepare? Do I have to prepare all the books? Now, if you are not so knowledgeable about, and you know that, okay, it's not something you want to bother about, you just want to, you own a fish farm, all you want to do is feed your fish and harvest your fish and sell, or you are into fishing and you have a boat, all you want to do is go out to sea and, you know, fish all day, or you're a farmer, or you're a carpenter, and you want to focus on those things. You don't want to get into accounting. I tell people, if you have a minimum number of experience, right, start using accounting tools. There are a number of free accounting tools and books online. You have QuickBooks, you have Sage, very available, very affordable. You have Chunk. You have, I heard about one this morning, WallX, fantastic book. And I recommend WallX, I recommend Chooks. You know, you have FreshBooks. Any one of these accounting books you have that are online, go in there, create an account, start keeping records, and they are so simple to use. Some of them even allow you even create invoices for your customers. Easy to use them. As you grow bigger, because again, as you grow bigger, your tax authorities, your friends, your investors start looking at you more deeply. There is a need for you to get an accounting consultant. If you cannot have an in-house accountant, get an accounting consultant. They are actually more affordable because they share their services between multiple firms. So it's cheaper for each firm, but they also make more money, right? So get an accounting consultant or get an accountant if you can. Of course, this is when you're getting big. Now, big is relative. As long as you can afford it, if you can afford it, you are big. Get an accountant. And finally, as early as possible, and this is a public unpaid announcement, get into the habit of paying your tax. Foko, over to you, please.
Oui, donc maintenant nous sommes sur quelques conseils qu'on peut vous donner concernant ce qui est aspect financier. Donc, Shegun nous recommande, première chose, de commencer tout petit, mais de déjà commencer. Première des choses, il faut déjà commencer. Donc, deuxième chose, si possible, utiliser des outils en ligne de comptabilité comme Chunk, FreshBooks, Xerox, SAP Business, QuickBooks, Sage Business. Donc, faites tout pour avoir une comptabilité régulière. Donc, il demande aussi d'avoir un consultant en comptabilité ou en fiscalité, aussi bien que d'avoir un comptable. C'est important de toujours avoir un comptable, même si c'est une petite entreprise. Et il dit de aussi prendre l'habitude de payer ses taxes. Over to you, Nadia.
Thank you, Foko. Ok, algumas dicas, ou seja, recomendações de como fazer para quem está a começar. O importante é começar, nem que seja pequeno, comece. Existem muitas ferramentas por aí que podem ser usadas. Existem bastante de softwares e aplicativos que até são gratuitos, financeiros que podem usar. Ele recomenda aqui alguns, QuickBooks, Sage Business. Eu conheço o Zoho, uso o Zoho, é bom, e por aí, ok? Agora, outra questão é que muitas vezes nós não somos ligados à finança, não queremos saber desse aspecto financeiro, fazer contas e tal. E nós dizemos, eu só quero pôr a mão na massa e fazer as coisas acontecerem. Nesse caso, então, busca um consultante, ok? Porque às vezes é difícil, é caro recrutar ou ter um contabilista só para cuidar da tua parte financeira. Então, paga um em part-time. Tenha um como consultante que cuide da parte financeira. Há muitos contabilistas que fazem isso, acaba por ser mais em conta e ajuda-te a ter a paz de espírito de ter as tuas coisas organizadas. Como nós dissemos, é importante para investidores, eventualmente, é importante para o banco, é muito importante ter as contas organizadas. Outra recomendação aqui do Segun é o hábito de pagar os impostos. Crie o hábito de pagar os impostos, porque isso também é uma obrigação quando nós temos um negócio legalizado e é uma forma também de ajudar-nos a ver realmente se o nosso negócio está ou não está a dar lucros. Ok? Segun, over to you.
All right, thank you very much. I saw a question from Ike. She asked, if my wife is an accountant, do I need to get an accountant? Well, if you and your wife have no issues, of course, you can use her to prepare your books, but please pay madam. It should be a paid service, it shouldn't be free. Okay, so let me go back to the summary and a recap, right? There are 4 major value books, right? The top 3 are the balance sheets, which I told you about, that shows the size of your empire, right? The income statement, which shows how profitable your business is. It shows the profitability of the company, right? Income statement. And then you have your cash flow statement, which shows the liquidity of the company. The 4th one is the equity book, which I didn't talk much about, but it basically shows your shareholders in your company. I mean, that's what it does, which is why I skipped it. I mean, once you know your shareholder, it's fine. The purpose of this is to use non-emotional, non-sentimental numbers to show the activities of the business. Each of these books, right, give a different view of the company. It has each by itself has their unique benefits, and they also have their limitations, which is why generally when investors come, they say, give me your financial reports. They're expecting you to give them all books so that using the different elements, the benefits and limitations of each, they're able to get a full, clear view of the financial status of your business, right? Every single transaction is important because every single transaction might be duplicated in different books per time, but every single transaction you make should be recorded in the appropriate books. And so it's important for you to start early, start small, build these books, and basically when each transaction is needed, they will know where to find it. And you can have very, very clear and stable books that show, of course, what you want to achieve, the status of your company. Foko, over to you, please.
Donc, en résumé, nous allons dire qu'il existe 3 documents de valeur, 3 tableaux de valeur. Mais il existe 4 tableaux de valeur, mais les 3 plus importants comprennent le bilan, le compte de pertes et profits ou compte de résultats et le tableau de trésorerie. Donc, notez-le bien, ces 3 documents très importants. Donc, vous devez aussi savoir que l'objectif d'avoir les chiffres de son entreprise, ça permet de faire le rapport sur l'activité et sur l'affaire à toutes ces différentes parties prenantes qu'on a citées tout à l'heure. Vous devez savoir que chacun de ces documents montre un aspect différent de l'entreprise. Donc, ça montre un aspect différent de l'entreprise. Et en 4e position, vous devez savoir que chaque mouvement, même un simple mouvement dans votre entreprise peut impacter tous les tableaux de votre entreprise. Donc, merci et Nadia, over to you.
Thank you, Foucault. Bom, em resumo, o que é que devem levar? Devem levar convosco que existem 4 pilares do relatório financeiro, ok? O balancete, a declaração de rendimento e o fluxo de caixa. O quarto, o livro de ações, nós não falamos cá hoje porque não é tão importante, desde que você conheça quem são os acionistas da tua empresa, quem são os sócios. Muitos de nós, a empresa é unipessoal, ok? Então, o balancete que mostra o tamanho do vosso império, a declaração de rendimento que mostra se ela está ou não está a dar lucros, ou seja, qual é a sua saúde financeira, e o fluxo de caixa que mostra se você tem ou não tem dinheiro, porque em termos de volume de operações, dinheiro que entra e dinheiro que sai. Ok? Lembrar-se que estes documentos são importantes, que você pode começar pequenininho e ir crescendo. Você pode buscar ajuda se precisar, arranja alguém, contrata alguém para fazer para ti se for necessário, mas é importante. Faça porque ajuda a manter uma transparência sobre a saúde do vosso negócio. E o quarto, mas não menos importante, é de se lembrar que qualquer mudança que vocês fizerem, qualquer decisão que vocês tiverem, qualquer transação que vocês fizerem, afetará esses 4 documentos, ok? Portanto, qualquer transação financeira afeta todos esses documentos. É basicamente isso para levar hoje em termos de relatório financeiro. Obrigado a todos. Questões no chat. Vamos continuar aqui a responder as questões com a ajuda do Shegun. Shegun, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've come to the very end, and I'm open to questions. This is where I go through the questions that we have, and I have quite a few. All right, I'm looking at the chat, and if you have a question, please drop it in, and I would look at them one after the other. But let me start with what I have here. Thank you, Adora, for helping with the questions, right? So I have a question. Alpha House, we asked, when should an entrepreneur start writing balance sheets? Is it at the end of the year or at the beginning of the year, or when the business starts or along the way? A balance sheet is, and I'm looking at your type of business and let me assume that you're a newbie. Let me assume that you're using an online software. Actually, every time you make a transaction, or you make an expense, or you make a purchase, or you pay your tax, or you collect a bank loan, your balance sheet shifts. There's a change in every single number in your balance sheet, which is why if you look at the definition of balance sheet, it is a snapshot. So a snapshot technically means it gives an instant reflection of what a company owns and what a company owes at that particular point in time. So it changes every single day. The balance sheet changes every single day, right? How often do you prepare it? Well, if you're a new company, I would say, hold on when you have a bit of, and if you have no immediate need, hold on, over time, as your accountant comes in, ask them to prepare it for you. If you're using an online document, from the very first input you make into it, it automatically calculates it for you. So every single day, any single time, you can have it. Now, for most bigger companies, they tend to prepare it at their end of financial year. That is because, of course, that's when they are expected to publish it. So because their transactions are so many, they do it at the end of every year. On your own part, at this stage, I think you can prepare it, or you can ask for it, or you can collate it every month, so at least you see what's happening in your business. Is your business growing? Are your assets diminishing? You can just see it. I recommend that. Next question. Temitope is asking, in our financial statement model, we were told that an example of an intangible asset, right, is goodwill. Please, can you give us example of goodwill as an intangible asset? Okay, so now what is goodwill? Goodwill is that value they give to a business by virtue of its reputation. So it's not as if it is money. But look at it. Let me give you an example. And this is very, very important. This is why this is why people spend so much on branding and marketing. Look at Tony Elumelu Foundation. If you go anywhere in the world today and you say you're a Tony Elumelu entrepreneur and you're able to show some documents to prove this, you're taken seriously, right? Why? Because Tony Elumelu Foundation has goodwill. It's not cash. But people perceive that it's a good company and they can relate with it. So, and I'll give you an example. So if I let's assume Coca-Cola shuts down today and they say, Segun, take my name, Coca-Cola. Don't use that. I can't give you my factory. I can't give you my bottles. I can't do anything. Just take the name and go. If I go to market and I say, hey, I am making 1 bottle of Coca-Cola per day, do you know how many people will pay for that bottle of Coca-Cola? Not because of what you put in the ingredient in the bottle, not because of the liquid content, no, but because of the name that Coca-Cola has made for itself. That whole brand name, that value is what is considered goodwill. And it usually requires an expert to calculate it for you. I hope you understand. That is why it's called an intangible asset. You cannot see it, but it is there. I hope I've been able to answer your question. Mohammed, let me go straight to you. Mohammed, you said, what is the relationship between bank account statements and financial books? Now, your bank account statement is a statement that shows the ins and outs of your bank account. So it tells you how much you have in the bank account at the time. It tells you how much you spent from that amount and how much you've put into that amount. But guess what? You might still have some cash transactions which are not reflected in your bank account statement because the money is not paid into the bank, right? You might also have, for instance, you sold some goods. The goods in your warehouse, they are not reflected in your bank account statement because it doesn't show that, right? If you sell it and you've not been paid and the cash is with you, it's not reflected in your bank account statement. If the money is paid to you in cash and you don't deposit it into your bank, it's not reflected in your bank account statement. However, all this information I've just listed here and I've just mentioned as example are captured in your financial value books. And that's where the difference is. And that is why most people will ask you for your financial value books or your financial reports and not ask you for your bank statement particularly. Unless if they're interested in checking out your liquidity, then they say, okay, give me your bank statement. And they now have to analyze that. Some of them analyze it and actually create financial bank statement by themselves and base their entire decision about their entire opinion about your company based on that. But they actually have to create financial bank statement, but they're not just telling you that. I hope I've been able to answer your question, Mohammed. Chibuzo, I see a question. What does it mean when balance sheets indicate solvent and insolvent? I do not know when a balance sheet indicates solvent and insolvent. However, I know when a company is insolvent. A company is insolvent when it's unable to meet its obligations to its customers. Maybe because they've run out of, or its stakeholders. So, of course, your stakeholders are your customers. If the business is unable to meet its responsibilities to its stakeholders, so you cannot pay your salaries anymore, you cannot power a generator, your company is listed as insolvent. However, the balance sheet has a way of showing that. Maybe it's in the negative. I've never seen it negative, by the way, so that's why I said I don't know how, but a balance sheet can actually give that impression, but it's not sufficient by itself to show that a company is insolvent. Please, if you have questions, look, I mean, I saw a lot of questions. If you have questions, please list it out. Somebody is typing out the questions for me, and I'm just going to go through them one, and I'm going through them one after the other. Henry, you asked, good day, sir, blah, blah, blah. How does an entrepreneur account for money withdrawn from the business for personal expense? Is it advisable to withdraw business money for personal expenses? The answer is a big no. Remember, and that is why TEF Foundation, the foundation asks you to open a company name or create a company. The minute you register a company, the minute you register a company, that company is an entity by itself. It has its own obligation to everybody. At that point, even though you're the one running the company, you know what? You, Henry, you're a shareholder to the company, and you are not the company. You're just a shareholder to a company. In fact, that company is meant to pay you salary. And it's only that salary or whatever bonus or allowances the company's leadership, company's management board approves for you. That's the only money you can spend. You're not allowed to take from that company money and use for personal expenses, because guess what? That is fraud. You're stealing money from the company. The company can sue you. And it's funny, right? Because it is your company, but it's two different entities. If you're going to collect money from the company, you must actually either say, you must classify it as maybe the company is paying you bonus, you are paid salary, or the company is declaring profit. It means that if you are taking 1 naira as profit, all shareholders must also get their percentage of that 1 naira. So if you are declaring 1 naira profit that is going to be shared amongst all shareholders and you own 50% of the company, you can only take 50% of that 1 naira. Every other person involved in the company actually should also be paid their part or their own portion of that 1 naira. If not, it is considered fraud. Oh my goodness. Foko, Naya, I forgot that you're meant to interpret some of these things, translate some of these things. Do you want to go through? I mean, I don't know, or should I just continue?
OK, thank you, Segun. Donc, nous allons répondre à quelques questions qui ont été posées, comme par exemple la question sur quand est-ce qu'un bilan doit être fait. Donc, déjà, il faut savoir que légalement, les bilans se font en fin d'année, chaque 31 décembre, en fonction des pays. Le 31 décembre de chaque année, on fait le bilan officiellement. Le bilan officiel est fait. Mais toujours est-il, comme on vous l'a expliqué, le bilan, c'est une image de l'entreprise à un moment donné. Donc, ça veut dire qu'à tout moment, vous pouvez tout arrêter et faire le bilan de l'entreprise, filmer l'entreprise et remettre cette image-là aux différentes parties prenantes. Donc, comme pour dire, il n'y a pas de date spécifique, ça va dépendre de tout un chacun, mais légalement, c'est le 31 décembre. Il y a eu la question sur le goodwill. Sur le goodwill, vous devez savoir, le goodwill, c'est un peu comme la valeur d'une entreprise. Parce que la question était, qu'en est-il des biens intangibles? Parce que la dernière fois, il avait parlé des biens intangibles et la personne se pose la question, qu'entend-on par bien intangible? Il a pris l'exemple du goodwill. Le goodwill ici, en fait, c'est la bonne image que l'entreprise renvoie. Les exemples que Tchegoun a pris sont les suivants. Là, par exemple, pris le cas de la Fondation Tony Lemelou, de TIF. Il dit, quel que soit l'endroit du monde où vous partez aujourd'hui, vous verrez que le TIF est reconnu, Tony est connu et ce programme est connu. Ce qui fait que cela donne de la valeur au programme. C'est pour ça que même dans les cours qu'on vous donne, on insiste sur le branding, sur la marque de votre entreprise, l'image de marque. C'est l'image de marque, en effet, qui permet à l'entreprise de créer des valeurs intangibles, donc des valeurs qu'on ne peut pas toucher. En fait, c'est de ça qu'il s'agit. Ce sont des valeurs qui sont liées à la notoriété et à l'image de l'entreprise. Et on vous a recommandé à plus d'un titre de beaucoup travailler sur votre branding, sur votre image de marque et sur votre façon d'apparaître pour le public. Donc, le deuxième exemple qu'il a pris, c'est Coca-Cola. Il dit, si aujourd'hui, on lui autorise juste que Coca-Cola ferme totalement dans tout le monde entier et on lui autorise d'utiliser le nom Coca-Cola, vous verrez que lorsqu'il va produire la première bouteille de Coca-Cola, tout le monde va vouloir cette bouteille et il pourra la vendre au prix qu'il veut. Pourquoi? Parce que Coca-Cola a une grosse goodwill, a une grosse valeur. Donc, l'autre question, c'était sur la finance. Quelqu'un posait la question de savoir quelle est la différence entre l'extrait de compte bancaire ou bien le compte bancaire et la trésorerie ou les comptes de trésorerie de l'entreprise. Il y a une grosse différence dans la mesure où le compte bancaire, c'est uniquement le cash que vous avez au sein de la banque et que l'extrait de compte bancaire vous donne l'historique de votre compte. Alors que le cash flow ou la trésorerie de l'entreprise tient compte des engagements envers les fournisseurs, des engagements envers les clients, tient compte du prévisionnel. Et il n'y a pas que le compte bancaire où il y a de l'argent, on peut aussi avoir de l'argent en caisse. Donc voilà globalement ce que tout ça veut dire. Et pour ce qui est de la solvabilité, la question était sur la solvabilité du bilan. Donc, Segun l'a expliqué, on parle plus de la solvabilité d'une entreprise. même si le bilan peut être ce tableau qui permet le mieux d'apprécier la solvabilité d'une entreprise. Et la solvabilité, une entreprise n'est plus solvable quand elle n'arrive plus à honorer à ses engagements. Et à travers le bilan, on peut facilement savoir si vous n'allez plus arriver à honorer vos engagements dans le futur. Donc, c'est aussi l'un des intérêts du bilan. Je pense que je vais m'arrêter là. Over to you, Nadia.
Hello, Nadia, are you there? Okay, pending when Nadia comes back, let me go on and answer a couple of more questions that I have here. Kabari, he said, is there a possibility for a company to have positive cash flow and still be in serious financial trouble? The answer is yes, and this is a very technical question you're asking, Kabari. Basically, cash flow is the liquidity, how much the company has ins and out, right? For example, you go to take a loan from a bank of $1 million or ₦1 million, right? At that point, you have your cash flow is positive because there's cash in your account. Now, if, for example, you're expected to pay the loan after 1 year, in the first month, second month, you are doing transactions, right? You're still cash positive. Your cash flow is positive, meaning that you always have cash, right? Till you exhaust that cash, then you start looking for money, even though you are doing business. Now, if, for example, for instance, you make more money, and at the end of month 12, when the bank is meant to remove its amount, the loan you gave, and the loan plus the interest they give to you, right? You have 2 million. It means that even if you remove 1.5 million, you still have 500,000 naira. Your cash flow is still positive and you are fine. But if at the end of that 12 months that they're meant to collect their 1 million plus interest of 500,000, you have only 500,000. It means that you are in trouble. Now, the entire books put together will show you that you're actually in trouble even before you get to months, maybe 9 or 10, because it shows all your loans at every point in time. So your cash flow, you might have a positive cash flow from month 1 to month 12, but your business is still in trouble because by the time they collect their capital and interest in end of month 12, you will have a negative cash flow and you really don't have no money to run the company. The next question, FF says, on what is tax calculated on? Is it on gross profit or net profit or on the selling cost? Also, which tax to small business is paid in Nigeria? Now, because this is a global, I mean, we have audience from all of Africa, right? I'm not going to answer the question particularly on Nigeria's tax issues, but I know that there is what they call value-added tax. Value-added tax is the tax that government says you put on top your invoices, on top your goods and services that the company needs to pay you, and then you pay the government at the end of every month. And I know that this is charged globally. And I'm going to rephrase that. There's what they call the value-added tax, right? The value-added, for example, your good is 10 naira. If VAT, and VAT in Nigeria is about 7.5%, right? If your good is 10 naira, you're meant to put 75 kobo, right, on it and charge your customers 10 naira, 75 kobo. If your good is 100 naira, you're meant to put 7 naira, 50 kobo on top your invoice and give to your customer. They're meant to pay you 10 naira, they're meant to pay you both the cost of your goods, which might be 10 naira, and the VAT you added, right? So you're collecting on behalf of the government. And is that some 7.5% that you pay to government at the end of the month? That is VAT. Now, there's now the tax that you pay as a company at the end of the year, which is called your company income tax. This is what you pay at the end of the year, right? Different countries have different rates for their company income tax, and this is calculated from your net profits. not this, profit and loss statements. If you look at the profit and loss statement, the tax is only taken from after you've gotten your operating profits, right? The government says, hey, now, so how much profit have you made after concluding your business? It is based on your net profit that you are now taxed. So there's a tax they put on, but there's now a tax they take from your profits, which is paid at the end of the accounting year or accounting season. Two different taxes paid by two different. That question specifically. I will look for one more question to answer before I pass Foco to answer. Somebody said, that means I'm just starting my business. How create your value books? At that point, you do not have a business, right? What you do is that you do a business forecast. You do a business forecast. So you say, and that's where you need to understand your business. You need to understand your customers. You need to be able to say how many pieces of whatever, if you're selling phone, how many phones will you sell next month? And you have to not just assume you sell 10 phones. You have to say, that's why you do a market research, right? You go to the market, ask, find out, right? What corner do they come to more? How much do they really buy so that your price point is good, right? Based on the information you gather, you now do what they call financial forecasts, right? It is not based on what has happened, it's based on what would happen. Over to you, Foco. And let's leave it for that. Foco, over to you.
Please, Shogun, I don't have more thing to say because it was a demonstration.
Okay.
I just give the hand.
Fantastic. At this point, I think I can hand over to
Nadia.
Adora. Adara, over to you. I think I'm done from my end here. I hope I've been able to answer most of the questions that were asked. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Segun. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Foco, for this very insightful and impactful session. I'm sure we all grab one or two, or even more than one or two, right? So we'll be sharing a few thoughts or a few key points going forward for our business plan and pitch upload coming forward. Okay, so sorry for the glitch. Okay, so for the key points that I mentioned earlier that we'll be sharing. So for today, before I go forward, for today, there will be no attendance, or there is no attendance because it is a recap session. So there's not necessarily an attendance. I see a lot of people talking about no attendance link and all of that. So I think I've been able to address that. Then secondly, the training will be ending. We'll close the training portal by Sunday, June 5th, 2022. So if you are yet to complete your module or your quizzes, kindly do so on or before 5th of June, as there will be no extension. So I'll pass it on to Ibukun to finish up and wrap up the session. Please pay rapt attention. I should be sharing very valid points going forward. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon again. And I'm sure you guys enjoyed this session and you were able to note one or two things down, and Segun tried as much as possible to answer all your questions. However, we know that a lot of people still had questions. So what we'll do is try as much as possible to compile those questions, send to Segun to provide responses to, and then we'll add to our frequently asked questions. Thank you so much, Segun, for this recap session. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Foco. for joining us today and supporting with the translations. I just have a few updates. As Adora mentioned, there will be no attendance, and this is because it's a recap session, so it's voluntary for people to attend, especially for people that attended the last one. Also, I'd like to just mention that we sent an email letting you know that the training portal closes on Sunday, 5th of June. So you need to ensure that you've completed all your modules and assessments before Sunday, because after that, the portal will close and you will no longer have access to the training. So please ensure to ensure to complete your assessments and modules. Very, very important. Secondly, the next phase of the program will be the pitching phase and business plan. And as mentioned in the email, only participants that have been shortlisted to move to the next phase of the program will be contacted. So this means that aside from us shortlisting using the performance scores, we're also considering other criteria. And I think I mentioned this when we had our onboarding, which means aside from performance, we're using partner requirements. Partner requirements simply means there are certain requirements partners who are sponsoring additional entrepreneurs would want, or the type of entrepreneurs they want to fund or select. This is basically what partners requirement means. We're also going to be considering gender balance. We need to ensure that we're able to select equal, or we have equal representation for the men and the women. Also, we're considering regional diversity, considering that the program is a Pan-African program, so we need to select across all 54 African countries. So we will not be selecting too many people from a particular country. We need to make sure there's a balance. So we'll be considering all of this at the point of shortlisting. So please, if you're shortlisted to move to the next phase of the program, you will be contacted. And also entrepreneurs who are not eligible to move to the next phase of the program will also receive an email from us. So please kindly ensure to check your emails and please read your email properly and thoroughly. Also, we'll have a list of people who have been shortlisted and we're going to paste it on the notice board on TF Connect. So please ensure to check the link to find, to look for your name and to see if you're eligible. So these are the key things I needed to discuss with us, and more information and next steps will be shared via email. And we're going to have another session as well next week to share more information and cover a lot of topics. So I'll just hand over to Foko and Nadia to please quickly summarize all I've said in French and Portuguese so we can end the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ibukun. Pour clôturer aujourd'hui, on nous annonce, la Fondation nous annonce qu'il n'y aura pas de liste de formulaires de présence, puisqu'il s'agissait d'une session de rattrapage. Donc, ce n'était vraiment pas obligatoire. Il n'y aura pas de formulaire de présence. Maintenant, comme annonce, on vous l'a déjà dit dans les emails, la plateforme va fermer le dimanche 5 juin. Donc, on ferme le 5 juin. Et vous devez donc savoir que il n'y aura pas de rallonge. Donc, après le 5 juin, il sera plus possible pour vous de suivre les cours en ligne ou de procéder au quiz. Et à la suite de cela, on vous l'a aussi dit, il n'y a que les personnes qui vont être présélectionnées pour la prochaine étape, qui vont pouvoir faire les business plans ou les résumés des business plans et les pitchs vidéo, dans les présentations vidéo. Il n'y a que cette catégorie de personnes. Et on vous a aussi dit que les critères de présélection pour la prochaine étape vont être liés à la performance. Et la performance a été expliquée pendant la session d'accueil, dans la première session qui a été tenue. Vous pouvez aller suivre ça sur YouTube, pour ceux qui n'ont pas ça en présence d'esprit. Donc, il faut aussi dire que les critères maintenant de sélection, ça peut être les critères de genre, c'est-à-dire homme-femme. Il y a des organismes qui veulent les femmes. Les critères vont aussi tenir compte des exigences des partenaires de la Fondation. En dehors des exigences des partenaires de la Fondation, il y a les critères régionaux, parce qu'il ne sera pas question qu'une seule zone ou un seul pays ait tous les financements. Donc, on va tenir compte du fait que tous les pays doivent être représentés. Donc, en résumé, on va dire tous les pays doivent être représentés. Donc, les critères qui vont permettre de continuer ou d'arrêter le programme à un moment vont tenir compte des régions, vont tenir compte des genres et vont tenir compte de vos performances. Les critères de performance vous ont été indiqués, comme la la participation, l'engagement dans les différents groupes, dans les plateformes TF Connect, YouTube, Facebook et ainsi de suite. Donc, vous serez évalué à partir de tout ça. Donc, je vous remercie et à la prochaine session. Over to you, Nadia.
Thank you, Foco. Ok, passar algumas informações importantes aqui partilhadas pela Bumi e da primeira informação é de que hoje não há lista de presença, portanto, não há lista de presença para se assinar. A segunda informação importante é que vocês receberam um e-mail a dizer que o portal fecha para as tarefas no dia 5 de junho, ou seja, este domingo. Quem ainda não completou os seus módulos, o seu treinamento, faça-o até o domingo, este domingo, às 23 horas, normalmente a hora da África Ocidental. E após esta fase, seguirá a fase do pitch e envio do resumo de negócio. Portanto, vai haver uma pré-seleção. As suas pré-selecionadas receberão uma comunicação por e-mail para que possam fazer os carregamentos dos seus vídeos e eventualmente depois os resumos de plano de negócio. Mas também as pessoas que não forem selecionadas também serão comunicadas por e-mail. Por isso, preste atenção aos vossos e-mails para saberem qual é o próximo passo, ok? Em termos de seleção ainda, há os critérios de seleção. Os critérios de seleção são os mais variados. Para além do desempenho, há os critérios próprios dos parceiros do TEF, há o critério regional, há o critério do balanço no gênero, enfim. A ideia é que nós somos 54 países na África e que haja representação de todos os países, que haja uma boa representação ou representação equivalente em termos do gênero e que haja outros critérios específicos dos parceiros do TEF também tenham que ser cumpridos. Portanto, é basicamente isso. Obrigado a todos. Ibukun, over to you.
Hey. All right, thank you so much, Nadia. So we have come to the end of the recap session. Please read your emails. We sent an email. Everything you require or you need to understand what the next steps are in the email. And we would also have a session next week by God's grace before the business upload starts. So I wish everyone all the best. Kindly complete your training. It ends on Sunday and the portal will close and you'll no longer have access. So have a wonderful day and blessed weekend, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, tchau a todos. Bom fim de semana.